In small village, there lived a poor carpenter named Aaron, a man with dreams carved from wood and hope. He loved a girl named Mira, the daughter of a rich landowner, but when he gave her his heart, she gave him only laughter and rejection. Everyone thought that was the end of his story, but what Aaron did next would shock the entire village and change his life forever. This is the story of love, pain, and destiny. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. The sun rose gently over the small village of Devgar. Its golden light touched the green fields, the muddy lanes, and the small wooden workshop at the edge of the road. Inside that workshop sat a young man named Aaron, a carpenter with kind eyes and calloused hands. His father had once been the best carpenter in the village, but after he died, Aaron took over the old workshop. The roof leaked during the rains, the tools were worn out, and the walls smelled of sawdust and sweat. Still, Aaron never complained. He believed every piece of wood could become something beautiful, just like every dream, no matter how small, could become something great. That morning, as he worked on a new carving, he couldn't stop thinking about Mira. Mira was the daughter of the richest man in Devgar, tall, graceful, and always surrounded by friends. Her laughter echoed through the village whenever she walked to the market. Aaron had watched her from afar since childhood. To him, she wasn't just beautiful. She was everything good the world could offer. But Aaron knew his place. He had no gold, no land, no fancy clothes, only his tools and his dreams. Still, his heart refused to listen to reason. One night, as the moon shone softly through the window, Aaron sat beside his wooden table and whispered to himself, "I may not have money to give her, flowers from the city, but I can give her something made from my heart." For 3 days and nights, he worked without rest. He carved a single rose out of wood, each petal thin as paper, each curve shaped with love and care. When he finished, the wooden rose looked so real that even the villagers couldn't believe it was handmade. Aaron smiled as he wrapped it carefully in a cloth. The next morning, he dressed in his cleanest shirt and walked toward the market, where Mira and her friends were laughing near a stall of jewelry. He took a deep breath. "Mira," he said softly, "I made something for you." Mira turned. Her eyes fell on the wooden rose. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "It's a rose," Aaron said shyly. "I carved it for you. It will never fade, like true love." For a moment, silence filled the air. Then one of her friends giggled. Another laughed louder. Mira's lips curved into a smirk. "You carved this for me," she said, her voice sharp with pride. "Aaron, you smell of wood and dust. Do you really think I'll take a flower from a poor carpenter?" The laughter cut through him like a blade. The villagers nearby turned to look. Aaron stood frozen, the wooden rose still trembling in his hands. He said nothing. Slowly, he placed the rose on the stall beside her and walked away. That night, Aaron sat alone in his dark workshop. His tools lay scattered, the unfinished chair before him forgotten. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. He looked at his hands, the same hands that built homes, repaired doors, and carved beauty from broken wood. "They laughed because I'm poor," he whispered, "but one day, this same wood will make them remember my name." The rain began to fall, tapping softly on the roof, as Arun picked up his hammer again. The workshop filled with the steady rhythm of his determination. It was the sound of heartbreak turning into promise. It was the sound of a new beginning. The days after Mira's rejection felt. Aaron no longer looked toward the market when he passed by. He heavy kept his head down and worked in silence. But inside him, something had changed forever. Each time his hammer struck the wood, he remembered her laughter. Each time his saw scraped through a plank, he remembered her words. "You smell of dust." At first those words hurt, then they began to drive him. One morning, as the sun rose over Devgar, Aaron looked at his reflection in a bucket of water. His eyes were tired, his palms rough. "I may not have money," he whispered, "but I have my hands, and they will change my life." That day, he began taking every job he could find. He fixed chairs, carved handles, repaired doors, built shelves for the old school, and even made toys for the children. No task was too small. He worked from dawn until the stars came out, his hammer echoing through the quiet night. The villagers began to notice. "That Aaron works harder than anyone I've seen," they would say. His father would be proud. One afternoon, while repairing a fence for an old farmer, Aaron met a stranger, an old man with a grey beard and eyes full of experience. The man carried a small bag of tools and introduced himself as Hari, a travelling craftsman who built furniture for noble families in distant towns. He watched Aaron work for a while, then smiled. "You have good hands, boy," he said, "but you work too hard, not smart enough." Aaron looked up, confused. "What do you mean, sir?" The old man chuckled. "You shape wood. But do you listen to it? Each piece speaks. It tells you what it wants to become." That night, Hari stayed in the workshop and showed Aaron new techniques: how to carve fine lines, how to polish with ash, how to make joints that last for years. Aaron listened carefully, learning faster than he ever had before. For 3 weeks, Hari lived in Devgar, teaching him everything he knew, and when he finally left, he said, "The world will soon know your work, Aaron. Keep your heart clean, and your hands will lead you to greatness." Aaron bowed deeply. "I will never forget you, Master." Months passed. Aaron's carvings grew finer, his name more respected. People from nearby villages began bringing him work. One day, while delivering a beautiful wooden chair to the local temple, he overheard 2 merchants talking. "I wish I could find someone who makes pieces like this for the city market," one of them said. Aaron hesitated, then spoke softly. "I made that chair." The merchant turned, surprised. "You, the carpenter from Devgar?" "Yes," Aaron said, standing tall. "I made it with my own hands." The merchant smiled. "Then maybe your hands can earn you more than this small village. Come to the city next month. Bring your work. I will show it to buyers there." Aaron felt his heart race. The city, a place he had only heard about in stories. Fear and excitement filled him all at once. That night, as the oil lamp flickered in his workshop, he looked at his hands again, harder, rougher, but steadier than ever. He whispered, "These calluses are my promise. One day they will build more than furniture. They will build my name outside." The moon shone through the window, touching the wooden rose still lying on his shelf, a quiet reminder of how it all began. The month passed faster than Aaron expected. Each day he worked from sunrise to sunset, preparing the best pieces he had ever made. A table polished like glass, a chair carved with floral designs, and a small jewelry box with hidden compartments. When the time came, he packed his tools and his wooden crafts carefully into a cart and began his journey to the city. He had never left Devgar before. As he walked along the dusty road, he looked back once, at his small workshop, standing silent under the morning sun. "Wait for me," he whispered. "I'll return stronger." The road was long, the days hot and his feet sore. But his heart carried him forward. At night, he slept beneath trees, with the stars as his roof and dreams as his blanket. After 3 days, the walls of the city finally rose before him, tall, crowded, and noisy. Carts rolled through stone streets, vendors shouted, and the smell of roasted food filled the air. For the first time, Aaron felt small. He followed the directions the merchant had given him and reached a busy marketplace filled with furniture shops and craftsmen. The merchant, Mr. Desai, was waiting outside his store, a big man with a kind smile and sharp eyes. "So you came," Desai said, clapping his shoulder. "Show me what you've brought." Aaron opened his cart. The merchant's eyes widened as he saw the furniture. He touched the table's smooth surface, examined the carvings, and nodded slowly. "These are not just good," he said. "They're art." He led Aaron inside, past rows of furniture shining under lanterns. "I will display your work in the front window," Desai said. "If the buyers like it, we'll talk business." Aaron bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir." Days turned into a week. Aaron stayed in a small room behind the shop, helping with repairs and polishing other craftsmen's work. Each morning he walked past the display window, where his furniture stood proudly for everyone to see. At first, no one noticed. Then, one afternoon, a wealthy woman stopped in front of the shop. She ran her hand over Aaron's carved chair and said, "Who made this?" "It's unlike anything I've seen," Desai smiled proudly. "A young carpenter from a small village." By evening, the woman bought the entire set, table, chair, and jewelry box, for a price Aaron couldn't even count without help. When Desai handed him the money, Aaron stared in disbelief. It was more than he had earned in a year. "Your work speaks louder than your name," Desai said. "Keep working hard, and soon everyone in this city will know it." That night, Aaron couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, looking out at the glowing city lights. For the first time, he saw the world not as something far away, but as something he could belong to. He remembered Mera's laughter, how small she had made him feel. But now, in the reflection of the window, he saw a man changed by effort, not by wealth. He whispered to himself, "Let them laugh. One day, they'll see what these hands can do." The next morning, Desai offered him a permanent place in the workshop and a share in the profits. Aaron accepted with a quiet smile. Back in Devgar, news of his success began to spread like fire in dry grass. The poor carpenter who was once mocked was now being spoken of with pride. And in one quiet corner of the village, Mera overheard his name. And for the first time, her heart stirred with something she didn't understand. Aaron's life began to change faster than the wind. In the city, his work was in high demand. The wooden chair that once sat in Desai's window now had copies being requested by merchants, nobles, and travelers from faraway towns. Each morning, Aaron opened the shop early, cleaned his tools, and began carving before the sun was fully awake. His calloused hands moved with confidence, and his eyes shone with quiet pride. The other workers in the shop respected him. Even Mr. Desai began to ask for his opinion on new designs. Aaron had gone from a poor village boy to a man whose art decorated the homes of the wealthy. But with success came challenges. Not everyone was happy to see a poor carpenter rise so high. One of the city craftsmen, Raghov, had worked for Desai for many years. He was older, proud, and jealous of the attention Aaron received. One evening, Raghov said bitterly, "You think your hands are better than mine just because of one lucky sale." Aaron looked up calmly. Not better, he said, just grateful for the chance to work. Raghav sneered. You'll learn the city isn't kind to dreamers. But Aaron didn't reply. He had learned that silence spoke louder than anger. As weeks passed, Aaron's fame grew. He began designing his own collection, hand-carved chairs and tables inspired by his village. He named it Roots of Devgar. Each piece told a story of the fields, the rains, the songs of workers, and the wooden rose that once broke his heart. Desai displayed the collection proudly, and soon buyers from other towns began to visit. Orders came faster than Aaron could make them. He hired 2 helpers from his village and sent letters home with money for the poor families who had once helped him. Back in Devgar, his name became a symbol of hope. Work hard like Aaron, the elders told the young boys. Turn your pain into purpose. Even Mira heard those words. Her father's wealth was still strong then, and she would smile coldly when people mentioned Aaron. But late at night, when she sat by her window, she sometimes remembered the boy who had offered her a wooden rose. She remembered his eyes, steady, kind, unbroken. Still, pride wouldn't let her think more. He's just lucky, she would whisper to herself. That's all. In the city, Aaron faced his first real trial of success. One afternoon, he discovered that Raghav had secretly copied his designs and sold them to another shop. When Desai found out, there was a loud argument. Raghav blamed Aaron, claiming he had stolen his ideas. For the first time, Aaron felt real anger rise in him. But instead of shouting, he placed his tools on the table and said quietly, "Let my work speak for me." That evening, Desai brought both men into the workshop. He placed one of Aaron's chairs beside Raghav's copy. Under the light of the oil lamps, everyone could see the truth. Aaron's work shone with life. Smooth, detailed, perfect. Raghav's was uneven and rushed. Desai looked at Aaron with pride. No lies can hide the truth that's carved by honest hands. Raghav left the shop that night and never returned. As the doors closed, Aaron looked at his hands again. They were bruised, tired, covered in sawdust, but they were steady. He smiled to himself. This is what dreams are made of. Wood, sweat, and patience. Back home, far away, Mira's father's business was beginning to shake. The winds of change had started blowing, and they were about to turn both their worlds upside down. The rains came early that year. In Devgar, the fields turned green again, but the grand mansion of Mira's family no longer shone like before. Cracks appeared on the walls. The golden lamps weren't lit every night. The laughter that once filled the courtyard had faded into silence. Mira's father, Ratan Lal, had lost most of his wealth in a failed business deal. The traders he trusted had cheated him, and the debts grew faster than he could pay them. Horses were sold. Servants left quietly. For the first time in her life, Mira woke to the sound of silence instead of music. She no longer wore silk gowns. Her once sparkling jewelry box now held only 2 silver bangles. She tried to hide her pain from her father, but she could see the worry in his tired eyes. "Don't worry, Papa," she said softly. "We'll be fine." He nodded, forcing a smile. "We will, my child. We must," but deep down, Mira knew that the days of luxury were over. Meanwhile, far away in the city, Aaron's workshop had become a name people respected. His collection, Roots of Devgar, had sold beyond expectation. The city's mayor had even ordered him to design a carved gate for a new public hall. Aaron now had workers of his own. humble boys who reminded him of his younger self. Though his hands were busy with work, his heart remained calm. He no longer thought of revenge or pride. He only thought of building, of creating beauty from effort. But one day, as he was preparing to visit his village for a temple repair project, an old memory stirred inside him. He smiled faintly. "Devga," he whispered. "It's been too long." When he returned to the village, people greeted him with warmth and pride. Children followed his cart, calling out his name. "Arun Baya! Arun Basha!" The old workshop where he had once carved his first wooden rose still stood, repaired and shining now. He planned to reopen it as a training place for young carpenters who couldn't afford to study in the city. Word of his return spread quickly. It reached Mira's house that same evening. She froze when she heard his name. "Aaron?" she repeated, as if she didn't believe it. "Yes." One of the servants replied, "He's become a very big man now, owns a company in the city. They say he's here to build something for the temple." Mira said nothing, but that night she couldn't sleep. Her thoughts went back to the market years ago, to the laughter, the wooden rose, the shame on his face. Guilt pressed heavy on her chest. The next morning, as she walked to the village market to sell some of their remaining household items, she saw him. Aaron stood near the temple gate, wearing simple clothes, talking kindly to the workers. His hands still bore the same marks, but his face was confident, peaceful. For a moment, she wanted to turn away, but her feet wouldn't move. She watched as the villagers greeted him with respect, their smiles full of pride. He didn't see her, but even from a distance, she could see what she had lost. Not wealth, but something deeper. That evening, Mira's mother handed her a small broken wooden jewelry box. "Your father's mother gave this to me," she said. "Maybe you can sell it or have it repaired." Mira looked closely. The lid was cracked, and one hinge was missing. Her hands trembled slightly. "There's only one man who can fix this," she whispered. The morning air was cool and soft when Mira reached Aaron's workshop. The familiar scent of wood and varnish surrounded her, the same smell she once mocked. She hesitated at the doorway. Inside, Aaron was working on a large temple door. His sleeves were rolled up, his hands steady as he carved a floral pattern. The sunlight fell across his face, highlighting the calm confidence of a man who had built his life from dust. Mira's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, but her throat felt dry. Finally, Aaron looked up. Their eyes met for the first time in years. He paused, surprised but composed. "Mira?" he said quietly. She swallowed. "Yes, it's been a long time." He nodded slowly. "It has." His tone was polite, distant, not angry, but careful. She held out the broken jewelry box. I came to ask if you could fix this. It belonged to my mother." Aaron looked at it without touching it. "The hinge is cracked," he said simply. "It can be repaired." Mira lowered her eyes. "Thank you." As he took the box, silence filled the room, heavy but not cruel. Mira watched him work. His hands moved with quiet strength, carving, sanding, repairing. Every motion carried discipline, not pride. "You've changed," she said softly after a while. Aaron didn't look up. "Time changes everyone." "I've heard you're successful now," she continued. "People speak of you with respect." Aaron smiled faintly. "Respect is not given. It's earned." "Every scar on my hands has a story." Mira's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry," she whispered suddenly. He stopped. The sound of her apology hung in the air like an echo. "For what?" he asked. For that day in the market, she said. For the things I said. For laughing at you when you did nothing wrong. I thought money made people valuable. But now I know how wrong I was. Aaron was silent for a long moment. Then he said, We all learn lessons. Some sooner, some later. Mira blinked back tears. I've lost everything, Aaron. My father's business failed. The house. It doesn't feel like home anymore. He placed the fixed jewelry box in her hands. It looked whole again, the crack invisible, the hinge smooth. Nothing stays broken forever, he said softly. Not wood, not people. She looked up at him, her eyes full of pain and hope. Do you still hate me? He smiled, not bitterly, but gently. No, Mira. Hate is for those who stop growing. You taught me something valuable, that love without respect means nothing. A group of villagers entered then, carrying planks for the temple project. They saw Mira and whispered among themselves. One of them laughed quietly. Look who's here now. The rich girl asking help from the poor man. Mira's face turned red with shame, but before she could speak, Aaron turned toward them. Enough, he said firmly. No one is poor or rich when they work with their hands. Help her carry the box home. And remember, mocking others only shows what's empty inside you. The villagers fell silent. Mira looked at him with gratitude and awe. In that moment, she realized he had become far greater than wealth could ever make her. As she left, she looked back once more. Aaron had already returned to his work, focused, calm, unshaken. That night, Mira sat by her window, holding the repaired box. She ran her fingers over the smooth wood and whispered, He fixed more than just this box today. He fixed something inside me. And in his workshop, Aaron lit a small lamp before his father's photo. Pride doesn't build, he said softly. Patience does. Outside, the wind carried his words through the quiet streets of Devgar, a lesson for everyone who heard them. The Temple Gate project had made Aaron's name spread far beyond Devgar. People from neighboring villages came to watch his team work, their chisels shaping stories into wood. Children whispered proudly, That's Aaron Paya, the man who built dreams from sawdust. The workshop had become more than a place for work. It was a family. Aaron taught poor boys how to carve, paid them fairly, and made sure everyone had food. The sound of tools, laughter, and hard work filled the air every day, but not everyone was happy about it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, a shadow stood outside the workshop. Raghav, the jealous craftsman who had once betrayed Aaron in the city. His eyes burned with envy as he watched Aaron's success. So, this is where the poor boy became a king. He muttered bitterly, Let's see how long his kingdom lasts. He had followed Aaron's news for months, waiting for a chance to ruin him. That night, when everyone had gone home, Raghav crept into the workshop. He kicked over a lantern, spilling oil across the wooden floor. Flames caught quickly, dancing up the walls. Within minutes, the workshop that Aaron had built with years of effort became a burning monster of orange and smoke. Aaron was still at the temple site when a boy came running, shouting, Paya! Fire! The workshop is burning. Aaron dropped his tools and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. The smell of burning wood hit him before he even saw the flames. His heart pounded as he reached the workshop. The roof was already caving in. Villagers were throwing water, shouting, panicking. Aaron's apprentices stood crying, unable to stop the fire. Move back! Aaron shouted, running straight into the flames. Aaron! No! Someone yelled, but he didn't stop. He rushed inside, covering his face with a cloth, trying to save whatever he could. His father's old tools, the designs, the sacred wooden rose that still sat on a shelf. Smoke filled his lungs. His arms burned. But he kept going. Suddenly, a beam cracked and fell. He stumbled, trapped under the heavy wood. The heat grew unbearable. Outside, Mira had just reached the scene. When she saw Aaron fall, something inside her broke. Without thinking, she ran toward the burning workshop. Mira! Stop! Her mother screamed, but she didn't listen. She pushed through the smoke, coughing, searching. Aaron! Where are you? He saw her through the haze, struggling to lift the beam. Go back! He shouted hoarsely. It's not safe! Not without you, she cried. With all her strength, she helped him push the beam aside. Together, coughing and choking, they stumbled out just as the roof collapsed behind them. The villagers rushed forward, pouring water, pulling them to safety. Aaron's arms were burned, his clothes torn, but he was alive. As dawn broke, the fire finally died. All that remained of the workshop were ashes, smoke, and twisted tools. Aaron sat silently, staring at the ruins. His eyes were red, not just from the smoke, but from heartbreak. Mira sat beside him, her face streaked with tears and soot. I'm sorry, she whispered. I couldn't let you die. He turned to her slowly. You shouldn't have risked your life. She shook her head. I already lost everything once by walking away from you. I won't make that mistake again. Aaron looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the truth in her eyes. She had changed. She wasn't the proud girl from years ago. She was human now, brave, flawed, and real. The villagers began murmuring, some crying for the loss of the workshop. Aaron stood up, his voice calm but firm. This fire may have taken my wood, he said, but it will not take my will. We'll build again. Together, a hush fell over the crowd. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if listening. Mira looked at him with tears shining in her eyes. Then let me help. He nodded slowly. Then help me rebuild, not just the walls, but the future. And as the first light of morning touched the ashes, hope rose again, glowing faintly, like embers refusing to die.
The fire left nothing but ashes. For days, the air around the workshop still smelled of smoke and loss. The villagers spoke in whispers. Some said Aaron would leave. Others said he'd never build again. But they didn't know Aaron. He stood before the ruins every morning, silent but unbroken. His eyes weren't full of tears. They were full of determination. Mira came each day, helping him clean the debris. She carried buckets of water, lifted wood, swept ashes. Her soft hands became rough, but she never complained. At first, the villagers watched in disbelief. The rich girl is working with a carpenter, they whispered. But as days turned into weeks, something changed. Inspired by them, others began to join in. Soon children fetched tools, elders brought food, and men helped rebuild the frame. What was once Aaron's workshop became the village's workshop, a symbol of unity and second chances. One evening, when the day's work was done, Mira sat beside Aaron, watching the sunset paint the sky. You could have gone back to the city, she said quietly. Started over there. Aaron smiled faintly. I didn't build this workshop to become rich. I built it to build people. The city gave me money, but this place gave me meaning. Mira looked at him, her heart full of admiration and guilt. You're a better person than I ever was." He shook his head. "No, I just fell enough times to learn how to stand." By the time winter arrived, a new building stood proudly where the old workshop had burned. Bigger, stronger, and more beautiful. Its beams were carved with patterns of the sun and the moon, symbols of hope and balance. Above the entrance, a sign read, "Aaron's Handcrafted Homes, where dreams are built." On the day of the grand opening, the whole village gathered. The temple bells rang, drums echoed, and flowers decorated the gate. Even the mayor came to cut the ribbon, praising Aaron for turning tragedy into triumph. But Aaron refused to stand alone in front of the crowd. He called Mira to his side. "This isn't just my work," he said. "When the fire took everything, she stood by me. She reminded me that strength is not just in hands, it's in hearts that don't give up." Mira's eyes welled up, but she smiled. The villagers cheered, clapping until their hands stung. Later that night, when the celebrations were over, the two of them sat outside the workshop under a sky full of stars. The smell of fresh wood still lingered in the air. Aaron opened a small box and took out something wrapped in cloth. Mira gasped when she saw it. The wooden rose. Burned slightly at the edges, but still beautiful. "I thought it was gone in the fire," she whispered. "I saved it," Aaron said softly. "It reminds me where I started, and who I was." She touched the rose gently. "And who you've become." There was silence for a moment, peaceful, not awkward. The past no longer stood between them. It had shaped them both. Finally, Mira said, "I don't have riches or silks anymore. All I have is honesty, and a wish to be part of your journey, if you'll let me." Aaron looked at her, really looked, and saw not the proud girl who once laughed at him, but the woman who had stood beside him in fire and ashes. He smiled. "We'll build together, with truth as our timber." She smiled back, her eyes shining under the starlight. From that day, Aaron's workshop became more than a place of craft. It became a school of life, where young men and women learned not just to carve wood,